Hey everyone, thanks for joining. We really appreciate, first of all, we appreciate your presence here regardless. The conference has been amazing. I'm really excited to have this panel and to give some people perspective around what we call Built On. By way of introduction, so I'm Senior Vice President of Corporate Development and Product Partnerships, and as part of the partnership thread, one of the motions we have is what we call Built On. And Built On, the idea is, it's pretty encompassing in that, A, you can leverage Databricks as your data infrastructure effectively to build a product on top of, which is a great opportunity both from, obviously we love it from a customer perspective, but then the ones that are aligned with us from an adjacency point of view, there's great partnership opportunities, and we'll talk to a couple of those. There's also the idea of building on top of our customers' Lakehouse, which we have examples of that here as well. It's a huge opportunity for us. We've got tons of examples of great customers who are leveraging both sides of that opportunity. And it's one we're investing a lot in. You'll see a lot of investment from us on the partnership perspective to make sure that we're doing what we can to help our built-on customers and built-on partners drive more velocity alongside Databricks, and get the most out of their most value that they possibly can out of us. And so with that, I'm thrilled to introduce the panel. We'll go down the row, and it would be great if you could obviously introduce yourself and a little bit about what your companies do, and then talk about your journey with Databricks and sort of how you've thought about it from a built-on point of view.
Amazing. I'll start?
Yes, please.
Cool. So hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Uri May. I'm the CEO and founder of a company called Hunters. We're a cybersecurity company. And the product that we've built and kind of like the mission in general is to transform security operations centers. For those of you data people that aren't too familiar with the security world, security operations center is where the data is flowing and decisions are being made and actions are being taken against breaches, threats, etc. And it's really one of the biggest data problems out there, like huge amounts of noise, a lot of emphasis on efficacy and accuracy, and a very big talent shortage, right? Like we don't have any efficient way to train analysts and to make them effective. So our mission is to build a technology that takes the existing tools with the existing teams and make it click and make it work in a very effective way, in a very efficient way, and also change the work of an analyst and make them more meaningful. Instead of like going through alerts and kind of like acknowledging a lot of false positives, give them analytical capabilities like clustering, prioritization, deep context and correlation to make more concise and accurate decisions. And one of the things that sets us apart is that we're not priced or limited by the amount of data that your organization brings in. Like we kind of like from day one wanted to separate ourselves from the other vendors in our category and be very focused on the security aspect and the analytics. And that created a very interesting opportunity to partner with companies like Databricks that are amazing at handling the data. So de facto what we're doing is that we're using Partner Connect technology in Databricks to connect to customers' Databricks. We help them with ingesting data from all of their security products, more than 200 integrations. And then we run the analysis on top of their Databricks. So their analysts are working on a Hunter's portal, but behind the scenes, all of the data and the compute is being done in their Databricks. So obviously, it's a very exciting partnership for us. And following up everything that was already discussed here numerous times of like bringing the compute to the data, bringing the workload to the data, I think that for us it's very exciting to see that strategy kind of like being pushed also from giants like Databricks. It kind of like reinforces our strategic direction that we took a few years ago.
Hi, everyone. I'm Derek Slager. I'm the co-founder and CTO at a company called Amperity. And Amperity is a customer data platform. So there's a lot of companies that are customer data platforms. But Amperity is a little bit unique in that we have a very deep outsized focus on building data foundations and building unified view of customer. People have been trying to do that for decades and mostly failing. Sort of our theory is that a lot of the reason why people fail is because they're trying to take a bunch of messy data and clean it up and make it perfect. Frankly, that's a fool's errand. And so we started Amperity to kind of bring sophisticated technology and techniques to the space to be able to really embrace that messy data and help our customers use more of the data as opposed to trying to clean it up. So a lot of what we do at our core uses machine learning and probabilistic techniques in order to construct this unified view of customer. And so obviously that correlates very well with a lot of the strengths of Databricks, and of course a lot of our customers also use Databricks. So it's been sort of a natural, smooth, and obvious path in many ways to our partnership with Databricks.
Hey everyone, I'm Edward. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called Catalysts. We are a customer automation platform, very similar to Amperity. We aggregate all of our customers' data into a singular view. So you have data in Salesforce, you have data in your data lake, you have data in Zendesk, Jira, Slack. We aggregate all of that into a singular view. So when you're trying to understand the health of your customer, instead of going to 12 places, you only have to go to one. We also enable you to have automated engagement. So you can say if a customer hasn't logged in 7 days, automatically send them an email and bother the hell out of them for the next 6 months. The reason we got onto Databricks was at some point in time, we hired an amazing CTO who led engineering at GitHub, and Shah said, look, we got to get our shit together. Oh, I forgot this is recorded. Get our stuff together, and we need to really elevate and serve the enterprise community. We really needed to have the ability to query data in a very, very fast fashion. I think that's the expectation of the market today. So yeah, we're super thrilled to have Databricks as a partner and to be built on top of Databricks.
And an investor as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Excited about. Really appreciate that. And I think like the commonality you hear is all of them are focused on data problems. And if you can leverage your Lakehouse for solving a lot of those problems and driving incremental value on top of it, in Hunter's case, it can drive a ton of value that obviously we're very excited about. Can you talk about, in the beginning I talked about sort of built on technology or built on Lakehouse, like the customer side, and maybe you should talk a little bit about how you've approached that from your perspective here, just because you do have a different orientation there in how you
From a go-to-market perspective?
From a go-to-market perspective, and then from, and sort of how you've thought about our broader ecosystem and where we can drive some value.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, I think eventually like the initial decision about not like partnering with data platforms to solve the data issue was kind of like straightforward for us, because it was like, we want to focus on security, we want to focus on analytics, we're not data people, we need a platform that we can build on top, that we can basically offload the risk to them. That was kind of like the initial thought process, but then as we went through that path and we're working with multiple data platforms now, we understood that it's actually like a really good go-to-market engine. Because one of the things that happens when you plug into customers' Lakehouse is that you also drive consumption in that Lakehouse. And that creates very strong alignment between our sales organization and Databricks sales organization. And that poses a lot of like opportunities for joint collaboration, et cetera. Specifically in our case, in cybersecurity, it's a massive data kind of like a workload that isn't completely tapped into in Databricks. So it also poses an opportunity for us to kind of like educate sellers and work with sellers on selling another use case that is a bit of a white space in their portfolio. So I think from a go-to-market perspective, it's a huge kind of like advantage for us, especially as a relatively small company fighting huge companies. We don't have the same budget for demand gen as Microsoft or Splunk or others. So I mean, being able to work with a company like Databricks and to get access to the customer base was super instrumental.
Yeah. And Derek, for the next one, I guess it'd be good for you. I'd love to hear on what are some of the key benefits that you think you've derived from your relationship with Databricks, the technology side, given your engineering focus.
Yeah, for sure. I think for us, and I think it's relevant to think about sort of the story of how we came to Databricks is actually relevant to the value we get from Databricks. So we started the company in 2016, not so long ago, and we weren't using Databricks in 2016, right? So sort of the bet we made from a platform stack perspective was around building around the open source stack, right? And I think the neat thing about Databricks is Databricks can come to you in pieces, right? And so it's compatible with the stack you start with. You're not making a bet on some proprietary stack and having to sort of put all your chips in that basket. You're sort of centered and framed on open source. And so I mention that because the value we've gotten from Databricks has been incremental. And in each case, Databricks has had to kind of earn that value, right? And so for us, the choice is always, should we use Databricks for that? Or would it make sense for us to build it ourselves? And what's been great is over the 4 to 5 years we've been using pieces of the Databricks stack, Databricks keeps getting better, right? And so those questions become easier to answer. The places where we started using Databricks, we're still using Databricks because those things are improving and getting better. There's other new offerings that we're able to embrace from Databricks, and again, we can sort of click those alongside. And there are still pieces of our stack that are not using Databricks from the kind of core open source data, and it all works together really nicely, right? And so for us, speaking to the benefit, it's really about acceleration for us. And I was literally just a few days ago in a conversation with the team internally, and we were talking about sort of an edge case on an ingest pipeline, and we're like, well, we could just use Databricks for that. And if we don't use Databricks for that, we're going to have to spend a team of engineers for 6 months to go and build something that's probably only going to be 80% as good. And so, for us, that allows us to go and take that engineering team and focus on the things that are most differentiated for us and kind of defer to the capabilities of Databricks where they have strengths. And so the really neat thing is that we can do that in kind of an a la carte basis. And in all cases, we've been fortunate that Databricks has continued to earn our business around those use cases.
That's awesome. Thanks very much. Ed, what about you on that same topic?
Well, interestingly, we're built on top of Databricks, meaning anytime a customer is querying customer data of their customer data, they're doing it because Databricks enables us to do that. But we also have a product partnership with Databricks in that anyone who has a Databricks Lakehouse, if they wanted to query that Lakehouse directly, they can leverage Catalyst to see that data. So we're in a very unique and interesting position, which we're both built on top of Databricks, but also companies and businesses and Databricks customers can bring that over directly to Catalyst. So I think the biggest advantage that we've gotten from Databricks, though, is the actual speed of implementation. The same experience that you expect when you go on Google, the same experience that you want instantaneous results, that's what we're able to provide to our customers. I think that's a very hard problem. Like you guys probably know this better than anyone. You got to be able to pull in customer data and contract data from Salesforce. You got to pull in hundreds of ticketing data from Zendesk. You got to pull in product usage metrics data. You got to pull in Jira ticket data. You got to pull in conversational data. So all of that to be able to say, hey, I need to know X, Y, Z about a customer instantaneously. The same consumer experience that you love about Google is the same experience that we give the B2B SaaS businesses. So yeah, Databricks has been immense in being able to help us deliver that from a speed perspective.
Thanks. I'm going to flip it a little bit, and I'm curious, just given the narrative that's gone on in the conference, obviously, generation AI, right? The whole idea of generative AI and what the power in it is. I think we've driven some pretty, I'd argue we've driven some pretty unique innovation along those lines, and I'd love to get your perspective as you've thought about generative AI and how it might impact your business. Have you given any? Are you starting to think about it strategically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, first of all, we're in a very competitive space, and in cybersecurity, there is this market dynamic where everyone is saying everything, but no one delivers anything. It's kind of like that's the nature of the business. So immediately, like the moment that ChatGPT was out, everyone said that they have ChatGPT, and then they're building these amazing copilots, which are basically chatbots that security analysts don't necessarily want to use, but I mean, it's there. And we immediately understood that we don't want to really take that path, and we want to understand how we're generating meaningful product features that can leverage the technology, but not necessarily do whatever we can to push the technology into our product. So I mean, let's find the problems first that Gen AI can solve, and let's not think about Gen AI as kind of like the objective. And in security, the reality is that you don't need to generate a lot of stuff. You already have a lot of data. Yeah. Like it's more about doing classification and regression and risk scoring and those type of analysis. And in reality, generative AI isn't the most amazing technology for that. Deep learning is really good. There's a lot of other things that are very relevant. But there are things where generative AI helps. And for example, one of the very cool features that we're doing that is that is already like out in GA and customers really like is this really cool widget that allows you to understand all kind of things inside our investigation process. So for example, if you see that a certain process generated a suspicious command line, and that command line has base64 that underneath it has Python code that does something weird with the internet, OpenAI, which is what we're using, is very good at understanding that and explaining that code. So now the analyst can click a button and get like an explanation of what that code does. That's a nice usage of it. And so we're thinking about other usages like that. Obviously, we're very excited from querying the data with free language.
Yep.
I think that's something that can really help in cyber investigations because, I mean, you don't want to think about the schema. You don't want to think about the columns. You want to follow up on your triage process and understand the other data points that you need to understand to make a decision whether or not this is malicious and benign. And obviously, time is critical. And we're also getting really interesting requests from our customers. One of the things that we're doing is we're working with really big organizations that have almost like a hierarchy in their security organization. So there's a lot of subsidiaries, and then there's a global security function that gives services to all of the subsidiaries. And sometimes there's like cultural gaps and language gaps. So for example, taking an incident and generating a report in English that describes what happened in that incident is something that a lot of those organizations are very excited for. And now it's very easy. Like LLMs do that in a very interesting way. So we're trying to think, the strategies that we're trying to think about the problems that this is relevant for. And in the same time, I think from a strategic perspective, we're trying to understand areas where it can make our technology, it can weaken our defensible point around certain areas of the technology. I think that the biggest thing for us is that we're doing a lot of ETLing and collection, and I believe that in the future ETL will be kind of like a no-brainer, not from a data transport perspective, but from a transformation perspective. I mean, we invested a lot of energy in understanding formats of more than 200 different security products. And then we experimented with ChatGPT. We pushed Palo Alto Firewall documentation into it, and we gave them some examples of our decoder, and we asked him to write a decoder for Palo Alto Firewall, and it worked amazingly well. And it's like, OK, maybe that's not a defensible IP for us anymore. Like, maybe we need to kind of like rethink about those areas of ingestion and transformation like in the future. And it's a good thought process. I mean, I think it makes us better, and it makes sure that we're investing our resources and assets and engineering time in the areas where we believe that are actually defensible and are relevant for our unique value proposition.
Yeah, I think for us, we see it kind of from two angles. There's what I kind of call the table stakes, right? And I think there's things that everybody should be doing in generative AI that take things that are cumbersome for people to do and make them easier and or open them up to new audiences, right? Taking a SQL interface and expanding it to a business user. I think Lakehouse IQ and things like that are very much in that category of everyone should do that, right? It's stupid not to do that because it just makes the thing that you're already doing better. And so a lot of the kind of areas that we're already working on and making progress on internally are sort of in the obvious category. I think the things that are in some ways more exciting for us is things we can do to enable our customers, right? Because ultimately, we're a service provider. We're helping these large consumer brands who are really excited about generative AI kind of solve the upfront problem, right? A lot of people, and this was true years ago when people first got excited about predictive analytics, right? They came to us and said, we want to do predictive analytics. And we said, great. We've learned from a lot of experience doing predictive analytics that to do that well, you need to start by building a great data foundation. They're like, no, we want to skip that. We just want to do predictive analytics, right? And these are the same conversations we're having about generative AI. And I'm not cynical about it. I think it's actually really exciting. I'm watching people open their minds up and think creatively and think in an innovative way, even when they're sort of talking about generative AI and labeling a use case that has nothing to do with generative AI, right? It's just getting them into that mindset of thinking about exciting possibilities. And so the conversations are really fun. For us, we kind of sometimes have to be the bearers of bad news, like, hey, you still have to build the data foundation, garbage in, garbage out, right? And many of the interesting generative AI use cases, which in the context of what we do serving large consumer brands, are mostly in the space of personalization, where a lot of times kind of there's interesting opportunities to do hyper optimization, but you sort of don't have enough creative resource to generate the treatments to optimize over, right? So there's some really neat cases we're talking about in the context of personalization that we're super excited about. But if the data you're using to generate these things isn't right, then your results are gonna be terrible, and then you're gonna blame generative AI when that wasn't really the problem to begin with. So still early innings, and I'm expecting that we're going to be spending a ton of time on that over the next year, and looking forward to talking about some of the things that work maybe when we come back next year.
Awesome.
Quick show of hands for those of you that work at companies with customers, or you have your own company with customers. Which of your businesses are selling software like hotcakes and unaffected by budget, and you're just killing it? Just raise your hand.
Yeah.
I don't see any hands.
No hands.
Yeah.
All right.
You can raise your hand.
Because if you did, I'm about to. Databricks. About to quit my job and join your company now. So the most interesting thing that our customers come to Catalyst with is, right now they're suffering from that, is that their new business is slowing down dramatically. And the only way they can extract more revenue is from their existing customers. The people that they've already sold to, their existing champions, people that already love their product, those are the easiest to sell to. So I'm super excited because we're actually this week launching our first conversational intelligence assistant, in which right now you have so many conversational bots out there, but so much data that exists in your customer base. But just imagine if you can say, hey, show me all customers in London, New York, Paris that haven't used feature X, that is upcoming for renewal in the next 90 days, that in the last Zoom meeting said the words, I hate Catalyst, and those are the customers that we're able to prioritize for you immediately. And I think for us, that's the prioritization that business leaders need right now. They need to quickly get to the decision makers or the people that already are in their product that they need to help consume more. So I think for us, that's probably the biggest thing from an AI perspective that we feel like is going to be very valuable to the businesses that we serve.
That's awesome. It sounds like a great feature. I guess I'm going to ask a selfish question, and I'm curious to get your perspective on, you guys have awesome stories leveraging the power of Lakehouse, leveraging Databricks itself. What do you think we should do? What do you think we should be doing better that might be able to help you in your businesses or your underlying technology? I want to hear the complaints.
So yeah, I mean, I think that from our perspective, we're a growing company. I mean, one of the challenges that we have now, and I mentioned like the talk track about the go-to-market, like we're really interested in harnessing the power of Databricks go-to-market engine and get access to customers. And it's always hard to a young startup to partner with a beast. So I mean, I think that any kind of help that we can have in bridging that gap between our sales team to Databricks sellers would be amazing. And it's like there's so many areas in Databricks that can work for everyone's favor. So I mean, we have some compute in AWS, we have some compute in Databricks, we have compute in other places. I mean, we can do a lot of things internally to align ourselves better with Databricks strategy moving forward. And I think that having that visibility, understanding what is the go-to-market strategy and what we should do to kind of like align ourselves better to it so we can do that jump in the most efficient way, I think that's the biggest thing.
We can talk about that.
Yeah? That's your job, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I think for me, and maybe this is less sort of specific feedback, and I think some of the things we've seen over the last couple of days have indicated that this is top of mind, but I think awareness of the ecosystem around, right? Obviously, if we imagine a world where every customer has everything documented in Unity catalog, right? We can imagine all the wonderful things that would happen, and that's not the world that I encounter with our customers who tend to be on the large side. And so, I think continuing to focus on technologies, in the spirit of uniform and things that have been announced that kind of pull ecosystem together. It's really, really important. All of our customers or many of our customers use Databricks, but even the customers of ours that use Databricks use other things as well.
Yeah.
And it's our job, in order to be successful and to bring value to our customers and to Databricks, we need to tie all those things together. And so I think taking the big ecosystem view, continuing to focus on open core, that's really important to us philosophically. It makes it easy for us to embrace the capabilities that Databricks has. That's super important for us. So I'd say so far so good, but stay there.
Honestly, this wasn't on the list of prep questions, so I just texted my CTO and said, Chris just said, hey, send me all your feature requests. So I'm waiting to get a text back. I would say if, put me on a spot, I would probably say just better understanding of how to navigate the Databricks ecosystem and storytelling. I feel like you guys have such a great reach to the technical and developer community. How do companies like the three of us up here partner with you guys to continue to tell that story and share our success stories and technology wins and technology challenges? And I think that's the big part of what honestly makes a conference great is like we're all problem solving things together. So considering we just got an investment from you guys, I'm probably not going to have a ton of feedback just yet. But yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fair. I think, if I'm to sum it up, it's navigating Databricks itself and navigating the ecosystem around us, which are both incredibly complex for what it's worth. It's our job, and it's incumbent on us to make sure that we're simplifying that process as much as we possibly can. And to the broader point, the ecosystem, it's ever changing, right? And we need to, and I think, we like to think of ourselves as a pretty strategic part of that ecosystem, and making sure that we're holistic and driving the right answers for our customers is always going to be top of mind. And I think that's what you saw in like the uniform announcement as an example. It's things we do want to simplify things. So it's really good feedback though. All right, excuse me. I guess I'll finish off with one last question on any advice you have to any entrepreneurs, people building products, people building companies out here on sort of how you'd have them embark on their journey.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, if you could touch on Databricks, it'd be helpful. I guess let me actually reframe it to be more specific. It's too generic.
Please.
If you were talking to any of the emerging companies out there who are considering partnering or building on top of Databricks, what advice would you give them from the outset?
Cool. Yeah, it's kind of like also what I thought to address. So my advice always to founders, and it's because I felt that, obviously, I felt that I didn't do it when I started. So, don't take it as me kind of like preaching, take it as me as kind of like admitting in my mistakes, is really understand the ICP, like the ideal customer profile, in the best way possible, narrowing down it as much as possible. And it sounds counterintuitive, and it sounds like, it's like, who wants to narrow down the ideal customer profile? If we're just starting, we want to talk with everyone. But honestly, talking with little people with high conversion is a lot more effective when you're young and you don't have resources. And it requires a lot of discipline, and it requires like a very strong methodology around it, and then to be persistent with it, but it's very important. And then if you figure it out, understand if that's relevant for Databricks. Because maybe it won't. Like maybe you're working with a vertical that has very little Databricks customers in geography that is not relevant for Databricks in a market segment that they have no penetration in. And that goes to every partner, especially something as fundamental as kind of like the data layer.
Yeah, I'd say maybe a little bit in the spirit of your feedback, but from a different angle. It's like one of those lessons learned that you're kind of embarrassed to have learned. It's really easy when you're contemplating a partnership to think about all the commercial opportunity. Like, oh, wow, like, we have this customer using Databricks, and think of the story we'll be able to tell, and like, think of all the money we'll make, right? This is going to be amazing. And having done this for a while, I've actually never seen a partnership of any variety work that isn't focused on customer outcomes. And so I would start by saying, what's in it for my customer? And if you can't articulate something that gets better for your customer when you combine forces and build on Databricks, like, not sustainable. You're not going to find that flywheel motion that you're ultimately after. And so I think I see a lot of people get shiny eyes about potential partnerships and miss the point that those aren't going anywhere unless you're driving value.
Yeah.
And the value needs to be for everybody, right? Where we're seeing value in our partnership with Databricks, our customer's really happy, and Databricks is really happy, and so are we. And if that wasn't happening, we'd be going nowhere, and I wouldn't be up here talking to you. So focus on the customer. Sounds really basic, but I need to give myself that reminder from time to time.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder. And I'll give Databricks a shout out here. We're certainly not your guys' biggest customer, and we certainly aren't your guys' biggest partner, but given your guys' scale, and when you guys come to one of your meetings with us, you guys bring like 10 people. I show up, there's like 10 people on the Zoom, and there's somebody that knows our tech stack incredibly well. There's somebody that knows our business incredibly well. There's somebody that knows our go-to-market motion very, very well. So I love the fact that you guys have such customer focus and that every single person's job is to drive incredible customer outcomes. So I think the best advice is that the success of your customers is everyone's responsibility. A lot of times people think, oh, the success of my customers is just the account managers or the go-to-market team, but it's actually the responsibility of the marketing team. It's the responsibility of the sales engineering team. It's the responsibility of the engineering team and the product team. So I think when you have a unified motion where everyone is operating for the success of your customers, I think you guys demonstrate that, and it shows. And I think those are some of the best companies in the world. So,
yeah, I appreciate that. I think there's a lot of salient points in there. Obviously, there's two things I'd highlight as someone who's on the other side of this partnership from a Databricks perspective that I think is really important. What you just heard. One is customer value and product, right? Like the amount of times that people reach out to us and say, hey, "Help me go to market," it never starts with that. It's got to start with, to your point, like a really cohesive and differentiated user experience. We're customer obsessed. If we have a better customer outcome, we're going to have a strong partnership. We'll figure out the tactics and how that happens later, but it's got to start with product. It's super important. And the second one I think is very important is every decision you make as an entrepreneur is an opportunity cost. Partnering is an opportunity cost. And so be cognizant of who you partner with and make sure you do get value out of it. Like I'm the first to admit that when you partner with us, it's an investment. And we're going to invest in you too. But it's an important one to think through. And I do think you have to be really cognizant of that and focus appropriately. And focus at Databricks too, honestly. That's one of the biggest challenges we have with partners is introduce me to the sales team. That does nothing. We have 1,500 sellers. Like we have to have a really cohesive, easy to understand message and target it at the right people who are doing the right thing with our customers. So I will leave it at that. Really appreciate everyone's time. I'm going to give that commercial to we have a built-on booth downstairs in the expo hall. On the back right side, you'll see partner. I think it's the partner hub, and right there's a built-on booth, and there's actually we have a startup offer that we're registering as well. That'll give everyone some free credits and things like that to get you up and running. Thanks again for all your time. Really appreciate everyone being here. And
thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
thank you.